ChoralEd. Welcome to episode 54 of ChoralEd. I'm your host, Micah Bland. Thanks so much for watching. For many of you directors out there, you likely will have to, at some point, audio record individual singers or your ensemble. Perhaps you are submitting audition recordings for individual singers for the all-state process in your state or region, or some other honor choir submission. Maybe it's for helping them with their music major auditions for college, or you're just making learning tracks for your singers. There's lots of reasons to need to audio record yourself, your ensemble, your individual singers. And so we're going to cover all that today. This episode will be in two parts. The first part will be how to set up your equipment. This will be a more brief overview. If you want to see more of the in-depth process, check out episode 52. The second part of this episode will be about the digital audio workstations, or DAWs. And this is how you will record and edit and mix your recordings on a computer. And so I'll show you two different DAWs, GarageBand and Pro Tools. And one is kind of the more basic GarageBand, and the other is the full industry standard Pro Tools. And so you can see both spectrums of audio recording and the DAWs that you may encounter. So to set up, first we're going to need a couple of items. We're going to need our microphone stand, a shock mount. This usually comes with the microphone. You don't need to buy that separately. You'll need a microphone of some type. This is a large condenser microphone, AKG. You're going to connect that to the shock mount. This one screws in. It's a little off there. All right, there we go. And usually the logo is going to be the front. There's sometimes, two sides to this. Well, depending on the large diaphragm, will have two sides. And you want this front side. Make sure you get the right side in there. You're then going to need an XLR cable. One end goes into the microphone. The other end goes into your interface. So this will communicate with the computer. So this translates analog signal into digital, into ones and zeros. So you're going to plug into one of the inputs. From here, your interface will have to be connected to your computer. And this interface has two different types of connectors that you can use, either one. This is a USB-C connection. My computer will need a USB-C. There's also, this one came with a USB-C to a USB, I think 2.0. This one you may be familiar with, more the larger USB insert. It depends on what your computer requires. So check out, before you buy an interface, check out what your computer needs and if it will come with the right connections. That's going to be important. So then this USB plugs into your computer. I'll be using a MacBook today. Plugs into your computer. And from there, I'll show you later here in the next episode, or not the episode, but the next part of this video, how to start up the DAW and everything else for that. You may also need some headphones. These will plug into not your computer, but into your interface. There will be a headphone output for you there. This is helpful for when you have a different track playing at different times. Maybe you're singing along with the track that's already recorded for an all-state audition or whatever it may be. You want to have headphones on. You can't have the track playing out loud because then it messes up what you're going into the microphone. The last thing I'll note that's really important is make sure you are going to enable the 48V, the phantom power here. All right, so if this is plugged in and powered up, the light would come on. This type of microphone, the large condenser microphone, requires phantom power. So be sure to include that if you're using a condenser microphone instead of a dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones would typically not need phantom power. I don't know any of them that do. It's always possible. There's always some unusual situation out there. But that's the quick setup. Again, if you need more support, check out episode 52, which kind of goes into more detail about all of these elements and so forth. But for now, we're going to transition over to DAWs. The first one being GarageBand. If you want to use the more advanced Pro Tools or you have a more advanced DAW, you may want to skip over to the third chapter of this video to the Pro Tools section. Welcome to our first DAW, GarageBand. Now, unfortunately, GarageBand is only available to Mac users. However, it is free and it's very user-friendly, and so it's a great starter DAW to get started on. There are other options, and there's a lot of similarities, so I will say that. This is what happens when you open it up. You get this select project. Of course, there's none right now. We will do an empty project. But before you start clicking on that, you do want to check the details here. You may want to adjust, if you know specifically the key that your song is or the tempo, this could be helpful in the time signature. If you're using a metronome and other things, this will adjust it and help you out. But the most important thing here is the input and output device. If you are using an interface, which we just talked about how to set that up, and I strongly encourage that because you get a much better recording, you want to select your interface. So when I opened this up, it was MacBook Pro microphone. So it was recording through my computer's microphone and not my interface. So my interface is actually called Studio 68C. So we want to make sure that's selected. There's other options here of what you could select, but we want that input device. The output device could be your computer speakers, but you probably don't want to do that. Like I said, you have some headphones plugged into your interface, and so you want to have this interface also selected here. This is mostly important if you're going to play back audio and want to hear it, and it's a full circle here if you're using everything through your interface. But there are reasons you may put it through your computer speakers for the output device, but I would avoid that personally. So again, make sure to check the details. In other DAWs, this is located in other places, and so you may have to select it in a different way. So with your specific DAW, look how to set up hardware, probably is what it would be called, or input-output device, setting up input-output device. So we are then going to open an empty project. There are many different things here, but for your microphone, you're going to select this mic or line. And so then we can see audio is coming in here at the moment. So we're getting signal. Now the question is, where is that coming from? You want to look down here at the track and make sure everything's set up correctly. There are different inputs. So my audio interface has 6 inputs. I want to make sure I have selected the input that I have plugged into, and I have plugged into input 1. If I go to input 2, well then this should no longer show up and there's no more audio coming in. So we want to go back to input 1. There we go, and we have audio back. Each of these is called a track. I say each of these because there will be more. We'll add more here in a second. But this is a track, and you can do different things. You can mute the audio here in that track. You can solo it. These are things that we won't get into. There is a level, how loud or soft. You can see the volume of that track. And there's a pan, that's left and right. So we would only get the left side or the right side coming out of your speakers or in the center. And for now, we're going to keep everything in the center. There's no reason to do anything else. So to record, well, before we get to that, there's other things you want to note here. The time signature and the metronome, count off, count in, and the metronome are automatically turned on, and you'll get this annoying metronome sound that you probably don't want unless there's a reason to use it. There's reasons to use it when you're recording to keep on tempo. If you're recording a piano track first and you want to stay in time with the recording later when you do multiple tracks, layering of multiple tracks, you may want to use that. But we're going to turn it off for now because it's not going to be useful or helpful to us for this recording. You can move around where you're going to start. Clicking the cursor here, you can select sections. So this is where you want to select at. So we can start here and look at that. We're going to start later on in the song or later on in the work. You can move things around by clicking and dragging. You can edit, cutting it shorter, extending it, making it smaller, right? By doing that, you can also delete it. Click, delete. We can move left and right on the visual place here with the slider or with your mouse and keyboard. So let's go back here. Let's record a little bit of audio. Check, check, check. Testing 1, 2, 3. We got a little bit here. And we're going to stop the recording after that. Now let's say I want to do multiple tracks. So I am going to make a learning track for my singers. What I do sometimes is I take you could record the piano first, the piano accompaniment. If you're skilled at that, record the accompaniment. You can then make a new track. So we're going to go up here to track, new. Again, we can select whatever we want. I'm going to select another one of these. I now have a second track. And it could be the same input or it could be a different input. So we want to check that first, make sure we got some sound. If you want to go back to the first track, you simply click on that track. And you see now that one's kind of finishing up. And now we're on track 1 again. Audio 1. You can rename it, different things, piano and voice. There we go. So right now we're selected on 2. We're recording on 2. So I could record the piano first with the metronome. That might be very helpful. Then go back and record the soprano part. Add a new track. Record the alto part. Record the tenor part. It could be played on the piano, it could be played, it could be sung, whatever you want to do. There's lots of different options for that. For now, I'm also going to show you a different way. I'm going to input a recently recorded song. There it is. I can move it around as well. Move it up to this track, move it down to here. This is a recent performance of Grandmother Moon by Eleanor Daly, I think is the first name. And so, you could record while this is playing. This is why you would need headphones. You don't want it playing out of your computer speakers because then that's going into your microphone that you're using to record. You want to have some headphones on so you're listening to this track while you sing along with the track that you've imported. This could be used maybe if there's a track that they provide you for all state auditions and they want you to sing along with that and record to that track. Well, great. There you go. You can input this and then record along with it. You'd select whichever track you want to use while this is playing and record. Now, after that, you can edit. Now, many auditions specifically will say non-edited material. So this would not be applicable to that. But if you're making a learning track and you want to do another take, you want to do different things, you simply add a new track, try it again, and then you click cut and paste the best one. So here is how you cut and paste. You can select here, you can double click, and look at this. This has changed now, and I can select here different sections and I can adjust it. I can do pitch correction, change the pitch. There's other things that we won't get into as far as what you can do. I don't even know what strength is. I don't even know what that means. In Pro Tools, it uses some, they have some unusual things. You can transpose instead of just pitch correction, change the actual key. I could delete. Well, now that section is gone. Let's delete more here. Delete. Oops, I deleted the whole thing. Let's undo that. You can still kind of click and drag and delete. You can actually bring it back. Sometimes some programs allow you to do that. Some programs do not. Deleted material. It's kind of saved in the track there so that you don't lose everything if you mess up. To go back, let's go look at one other thing. Double click on the track here again, or click on this element here. And you can adjust the compression, the EQ, and other things, the reverb. Again, we won't get into the details of this, but these are options for you. it has to be activated. So this is on, this is off. The blue light is on when it's activated. You can also control that here, on and off. So now it's on. I could adjust the sound by lowering the low end frequencies. I can go into specific sections here and click on like this one and adjust it. Here's another one. Where's the orange one? Oh, there it is. I can adjust that. There's all these different EQ bands, they call them. Increase or decrease. Most of the time you're going to want to decrease, and usually it's going to be like around here. If it's a voice, all the stuff down low is not useful. So you want to get rid of all that stuff that's below the pitch that they're singing. Basses are going to sing down to 110-ish. So usually here, soprano altos, a low A is 220. And that's the second ledger line below the staff, treble clef. So you want to be somewhere here in the 150 range. They're probably not going to sing below that. But you can adjust things here. You can turn it off, turn it on. This is also adjusting here. You can see we're adjusting that EQ is changed. If I do different things here, there's that spot. So there's a lot of options here as far as how you can mix, edit, adjust multiple tracks. You can only record one at a time, but I could add 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks here and have them play at different times. Now, the last step, how to get your recording out. We're going to go to Share, Export Song to Disk, and then you're going to save it wherever you want to, call it whatever you want. It could be an MP3 file, a WAV file, AAC, different qualities. MP3 is a smaller file, but WAV is usually the best uncompressed, best quality recording, but it is a larger file. So there you have it. There is GarageBand. Next, we're going to move on to Pro Tools and show you how to use those elements. If you don't want the more advanced technique, then thanks for watching. But here is now Pro Tools. Here in the third part of today's episode, we're going to talk about Pro Tools, our second DAW for the day. Now, Pro Tools is the industry standard for audio recording. It is the most complex, and so you may be hesitant to use it, and it is more expensive. But what I want to point out here is there are features that Pro Tools uses that is more complex and similar to other DAWs and more complex than GarageBand, which was very limited in what it could do and how it worked. And so there are other DAWs out there that will function more closely to Pro Tools. And so what I encourage you to do is I'll try to use the terms that you might want to search for in your specific DAW. So I would suggest that you search for Record Enable in Ableton or whatever program you're using, and then that should hopefully help you with the process a little bit more. But the process here will be very similar to other DAWs that you experience that are more advanced than GarageBand. So to begin, when you start up, you will see this window, and you can title it whatever you want. There's other templates you can use, but down here is what you want to focus on, and that is the sample rate and the bit depth. You are welcome to change it from 44.1 to 48 kilohertz and 24-bit to 32-bit float. There are many options and things that you want to use. 44.1 is a CD quality standard. 48 is also very common. Above that, not a lot of people, it's rare to use anything above 48 kilohertz. And 24-bit float is, or 24-bit is pretty standard as well. 32-bit float is useful. You would hit create and it would pull up this screen. I've already created one. The next thing I would suggest that you do is check the setup. This could be called in other DAWs, it could be called hardware, playback engine, setup, various things. But similar to GarageBand, you want to make sure that your interface is selected. If not, you're going to be trying to use your built-in computer speakers, which is not where you want to pull the audio from. So you see here, it could have been MacBook Pro microphone, but we have selected our interface. You can also change the buffer size, the sample rate. This is again more complex, and if you're in the 256 or the 512 range, 128 to 512, you're going to be fine with the buffer rate. You're probably not doing 60, 70 tracks as some people do for pop tunes and so forth. You're going to probably do 4 or 5 tracks. So the next thing after that is you want to add a track. You can go here, track, new. You can select all the features. I'm going to do multiple. I'm going to show you a stereo track as well. You can call it whatever you want here. This will be soprano. And this will be called piano. And see, it's added me 2 more tracks. I already had one called choir here. And you could add in Pro Tools hundreds and hundreds of tracks. I forget the max number. I think it's 199, something like that, for certain levels of Pro Tools. There's different levels, I believe. From here, you want to go to the mix window. So there are 2 windows in Pro Tools. There's the edit and the mix window. You can also get there from the command equals button. You can switch back and forth between the 2. And you will want to select the microphone input. You got to say, which microphone input in my interface will I be using? So here you see 1 is selected now, 2 is yellow. To be honest, I'm not sure why that is here in this case, but you see the check mark is next to line 1. And that's what I've plugged into my interface here. I could plug in additional components. I could have a separate microphone into channel 2, and you see it automatically put it into channel 2 here for this second one I created. I can make them both channel 1. And then here, this is a stereo track. You see only 1 mono signal here. There's actually 2 here, a left and a right. And so in that case, it's going to take up 2 input channels in your interface, 1 and 2. And so depending on your interface, how many inputs you have, this interface specifically that I'm using has 4 channels possible. So I could have 1 microphone plugged in here. I could have insert 2 be a piano. I could have insert 3 be another vocal microphone. Insert 4, who knows what, something else, a hand drum, I don't know. So there's various options there. We're going to go back to our edit window. So in GarageBand, you simply had to click on and you could only record 1 track at a time. Well, in Pro Tools and many other DAWs, you have to record enable. You see track record enable pop up here. And now as I click that, now you can see the microphone I have plugged in is starting to activate and be visible here. So you can record enable as many as you want. Of course, you're going to have other microphones plugged in, and so you don't want all 4 of these on track 1 or microphone 1. You want to make sure they're on the correct microphones. And you could record all 4 of those instruments, all 8, however many inputs your interface has. You could record all those instruments and microphones at the same time. So that's be record enabled. And then you would hit the record button here on the transport. If this is not here, go to Window and select Transport. See, now it's gone and we can bring it back. And we're going to record. And nothing's happened. Uh-oh, it's broken. No, it's not broken. You actually also have to then push play. Many of these DAWs require you to record enable track, hit record on here, and then play. Now, as you see, it is capturing audio. You then hit stop or spacebar, pretty common. This will stay active, that's fine, not a big deal. You can turn it off if you want to while you're listening back and doing other things, but this can stay active. If nothing is active and you try to hit record, it'll give you an error message. No tracks are record enabled, so you physically cannot record if you don't have anything selected. The other element I want to point out here is how to edit. So we can move things around. We can move into different tracks even. We can select, highlight, delete. We can cut the beginning and end. And actually it's saved in there and you can kind of pull back all the way to where we are. You can cut the beginning and the end, either spot. And you can add in fades. Fade in the audio and fade out the audio. That is controlled through these three, and each one can also be selected individually. So this is the cutting the beginning and the end. This one is the selector tool, and this is the grabber tool with the whole thing. When you click on this up here, you get all three. At the bottom half will be the grabber tool, the top half will be the selector tool, and then on the ends you have to be sometimes it can be finicky. You'll get the I forget what this is officially called. Let's see if it'll tell me. It's not going to tell me. But it cuts the beginning and the end. Trim, I believe it's trim tool. Thank you. Just popped into my head. And then the fader's still in the top corners. So that is how to edit your audio. Similar in GarageBand, you could record once and then do another take and put a different microphone, put it in another track, and then you could cut and paste and move them from one to the other and to combine them into one track at the end, taking the best parts of those tracks. And in many audition requirements, they will say an unedited recording. That would be editing, so you cannot do that for auditions, but you could do that for learning tracks or other things that you're creating for your ensemble. The last thing I want to show you here is the mix window. And in here, we can control the volume. So you see each track is now vertical. Before they were horizontal. Track 1, 2, 3, they're called choir, soprano, piano. Well, here they're vertical, choir, soprano, piano. You can control the volume of it, the fader, like any mixer. This is more like a mixer here. You can mute it. You can solo it, so all you'll hear is that track. And then in GarageBand, the plugins, what we call plugins or inserts, were all down here in this area. It was the EQ, the compression, those types of things. Well, here you have to add the plugin. In various programs, they have things built in that come free with the program. I have some here that I purchase, like this F6 and F6 RTA. But built in is this EQ3 7-band. And from there, you can adjust the EQ just for that track. You can change multiple things. You can search and look into that a little bit more to learn how to best EQ various vocals and get the best sound. In general, you're probably going to want to cut then instead of add. So cutting sound usually in this area instead of adding sound, adding EQ. And usually a little bit goes a long way. You don't need a lot unless you're doing a lot of microphones, a lot of tracks. A few tracks, you're not going to do a lot. There's other plugins you could add. You can add up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe it is, 5 here. But actually there's a whole other set that you could add, make visible. That's a little more complex. You could do 10 different plugins. You're only going to need 2, maybe 4 if you're adventurous enough. So then you mix and edit here. You can look more into that and research a little bit more about how to mix your audio and add in those plugins and play around with that on your own. The last thing I want to show you is how to export. In Pro Tools and other programs, it's called bouncing, to bounce the track. You want to first make a selection of the audio that you want. You may not want the entire thing. It could just be the short little section. Does not have to be all the tracks. It just has to be one. Make sure all of this is set. You don't have one of these muted by accident. You have all the elements on that you want to play. You could also play it back and test it and see if you like what you hear. And then you're going to go to File, Bounce Mix. It's going to give you several options. You can title it something different from the session. What they call a session. Pro Tools session is the overall file. You can select the file type, MP3, ACC, a WAV file. Choose where it goes. And then you want to make sure this is checked offline. It's going to be way better. When it's unchecked, it will be in real time. So if you're bouncing a full 60-minute concert, well, it will take 60 minutes to bounce that file. No one has time for that. So offline works great. It takes a significantly less amount of time. A 60-minute concert probably would take 3 to 4 minutes to bounce. Maybe that's a little much. Probably 2 minutes to bounce. From there, it will end up in whatever folder you told it to be in. So that is Pro Tools for you again. There are elements here like the record enable and the setup hardware and the mixing and the plugins that will be similar to other DAWs that you encounter, even if you don't use Pro Tools specifically. I hope you have an enjoyable time recording your singers, your ensembles, and until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.